First of all, I'm Rebecca Kilbreath. I'm editor-in-chief of Restaurant Development and Design magazine. I've been editor, I think, since 2016, and before that, I'd been a writer and an editor for many, many years. And then, well, before that, I was a waitress and a bartender and everything else. I even did a little tour of duty at Walt Disney World as a college program kid. So I've worked in a lot of restaurant settings. So in some ways, I think I've been preparing for this job my whole life somehow. But basically, I'm the editor, and then our magazine is Restaurant Development and Design. And if you're not familiar with it, it's a magazine, comes out 6 times a year. We have a website, we have webinars. We consider ourselves sort of a peer-driven resource to help restaurant development and design professionals learn from each other, share their case studies. We do Q&As. We do a lot of various formats in order to sort of facilitate that peer learning. So that's kind of what we do. And I'm going to jump in. I'm going to see. Okay, that's okay. Over the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an update on where the restaurant industry is a little bit. I'm not really a forecaster, but I do know forecasters, so that helps. But basically, I'm going to talk about the forecast we have up on our website. Our sister publication, which a lot of you might be familiar with, is Foodservice Equipment and Supplies. And this week, they put up their annual forecast. That's something to check out. I've got some demographic shifts to talk about. I'm going to do a little future casting, and then I'm also going to talk about some important restaurant design trends from the operator perspective, the consumer perspective, and also the designer's perspective, like what those trends are. I also talk very fast, and I'm going to, if I'm to just be like, slow down, God, stop. Just let me know, and I will. I promise. Yeah, just to be like, shh, just slow down. And then one thing I will never tell you that I think is important to put out the gate, because as a restaurant design magazine, everyone thinks, oh, pretty pictures, lovely. I will never tell you that restaurant design is more important than restaurant function. Everyone knows that, but I think that that's important to state. I think that in the best case scenario, form always follows function, and I feel that way about almost everything in life. So I think that that's an important thing. We don't prioritize the pretty over the functional. So some of these trends, you'll probably be surprised, because I'm not just going to talk about things like, I don't know, Art Deco, like finishings. And then basically, please feel free to ask any questions. And also, please, if you think that I just missed something entirely, tell me at the end, because I want to know, because I don't know. You guys are obviously on the ground in a way that I'm not. I tend to see the projects at the very beginning of them opening versus at the development stage. That's something that I like to keep track of. And then I think the first thing I wanted to talk about was at RD&D back in 2020, I'm rocking things over, back in 2020 during the pandemic, we all remember, I think one of the challenges we had was it turns out that people did not want to contact me about their awesome new restaurant projects. And I was like, what are we going to do in this magazine? So I came up with the idea of doing pulse surveys. So we do a series of pulse surveys. Every issue now has a reader subscriber-based pulse survey. And now I would never say that these are like, perfectly mathematically like appropriate. I wouldn't weight them or anything, but they do give us a real vibe check and a real sense of what's happening. They started out as what's your biggest challenge right now? So I could find out sort of collectively what was happening in the industry. It was aside from literally calling every single person I know individually, being like, how terrible is this? Please tell me. And sometimes, some people were very honest and some were not, and some were just, I can't talk right now. So the pulse surveys gave us an opportunity to find out what was going on. And so now they've sort of evolved into kind of a vibe check for our readers, and it also allows me to sort of like test out specific subjects and things like that. So in our most recent survey, and this is where I have to look at this because I'll never see it up there. In October, we fielded a survey and we asked readers what they think business will be like in 2025 versus 2024. And 59% of our D&D readers felt that business would be better in 2025 than 2024. And it's notable because I think this was before the election. I know people have feelings every which way about it. But I do think that's that most people are feeling pretty optimistic. And I also wanted to provide that data because when you look at FENS's annual forecast, which is live on fesmag.com this week, thank you. Yeah, we'll click ahead so everyone knows what's up. There we go. Here we go. And then if we look at the forecast, the National Restaurant Association said that the GDP will grow by 1.9% in 2025, and that disposable income is expected to grow by 1.8% in 2025. Now, Joe, my boss, quoted Yogi Berra because that's very much his personality, and he said 2025 will be like deja vu all over again. So I think that there's a lot of room for seeing continual improvement, which I think people are leaving some room for. I think that that's something that we're not going to know entirely until it happens, of course, but it's a good thing to think about. The where am I at? Okay, see, I can't see because I don't have my glasses on. Inflation's obviously been a huge challenge for the economy and for restaurants in general, but most forecasters are saying, including the National Restaurant Association, that they think that inflation will continue to moderate, coming down from the big high in 2022. So I think that's good news as well. But I also think that there are some changing cultural norms and demographic shifts that are kind of a big deal and will be very much in the minds of operators, developers, everyone who's working on new restaurant projects. So I just read a study actually that said more people are working from home, and I have a hybrid job where I work from home part of the time and I'm in the office part of the time. And because of all these hybrid jobs and people changing traffic patterns, it's becoming quite challenging to operators to kind of get a handle on what the traffic is going to be on any given day, especially in high foot traffic areas. And that's making planning really hard. It makes inventory management difficult. It makes staffing, they mentioned in the last session, difficult. All of those things are affected by the changing cultural norms. And then I also wanted to talk about technology. Technology is so important in how restaurants are evolving. And I thought this data was really interesting. In February of 2020, 5% of food service orders overall were taken digitally. In August of 2024, 16% of all food service orders were taken digitally. But at QSRs, the quick service restaurants, it's already up to 18%. We kind of expect that to continue growing. And it reminded me, several years ago, I did an interview with Peter Cancro, who's the CEO of Jersey Mike Subs. And he told me at some point they realized that what they really had was a technology company. And everything that he did, and they just kind of sold, I think, to private equity is big news. Everything they did at that company was with the idea that they're a technology company versus a food service company. And I thought that that was really interesting because that is in line with everything I'm hearing from other chain operators in general. Technology is driving everything. And I think the one thing I wanted to make sure I included was that, what does this data mean in terms of on the ground? What does it mean for restaurant operations? And for me, I think it means that quick service footprints will continue to shrink because they're focusing on a frictionless off-premises experience, and the digital ordering often implies they're leaving, not always, but often. And then I think that QSRs in particular are probably going to have very punchy interiors because you're going in and out pretty quickly. And that's very often been the case, but I think that's going to continue to streamline. I also think it means that people are going to continue to focus on developing better packaging, better ways to move food to where people are going. I think all that stuff is something that the chains are going to continue to focus on. So those are some of the trends I've been seeing. And then, demographic shifts. This is a fun one. So I put up the demographics because millennials are now the largest generation, and then followed pretty closely by Gen Z, boomers, and then finally the Gen Xers pulling up the rear as usual. I think technology, Gen Z is what we're going to mostly focus on, frankly, because younger consumers have largely been trained to stay at home now, and that's partly the pandemic, partly their phones, just partly lifestyle changes. And I think that that's going to have a huge impact on how restaurants are designed. We've already been seeing it for several years. Restaurants are done much more in a residential vibe, a residential scale, and that's going to continue. I've already seen articles and pitches that basically tell me that even bars are being designed to feel like living rooms because it's to lure young people out. They want to make it feel comfortable. So they're doing, whether it's an expansive living room feeling or actually creating a series of rooms so it feels like you're in a house, everything's becoming much more residential in scale. It's also important to note that Gen Z consumers are not as comfortable in restaurants as older folks. They just aren't. And I was really surprised. I had my friends over at Menu Matters, they're a menu consultancy and they do a lot of market research, said that Gen Z finds it difficult to go into a restaurant and make a spur-of-the-moment menu decision. And I thought that that was kind of wild. And I'm like, what does that mean? And I didn't believe them out the gate. I was like, what are they talking about over there? So I did what every American does. I brought that up at Thanksgiving because I didn't believe it. And I was like, let's fight about this. And it seems safer to fight about than some of the other things. And my best friend's daughter is 16. And I said this and she immediately said, oh, yes, that's true. And her mom looked absolutely shocked. And I was like, well, give me an example. What do you do? And she's like, well, I try to look online first. She goes, and then I tell my mom what I want. And then she orders for me. And I look at her mom, who's my best friend, and I was like, what are you doing with this kid? And she was surprised. She literally did not know that that's what her daughter was doing. She had no idea it was an anxiety avoidance behavior. She was just being the mom, right? So I thought that that was really fascinating. And I feel like that's one of those things that is something hidden knowledge, if that makes sense, about what's going on. And so I thought that was interesting. And then I think what it means for restaurant designs, it kind of remains to be seen because they're still really young. But there's 70 million people. This is a very large cohort, and their preferences are going to matter as their buying power grows. And it's something that we're going to have to really be mindful of. I also think that what's interesting about Gen Z is they utilize convenience stores and C-stores in a way that younger generations did quick service and fast food. So they're going to C-stores for their meals, they're going for food, and it really explains why, obviously, convenience stores have already started to lean into the idea of having restaurants on site, and that's only going to get bigger. I see a lot of investment in that area. What am I listening? Sure. Well, yes and no, but if you think about it, so you look at the data, the millennials drove a lot of the design choices. I mean, I've edited so many stories about what millennials want 10 years ago and longer. So that became a huge thing. And so this is something that, you know, that people who are spending tend to drive choices. And so I think that that's something we have to all consider. I think it's interesting. And yeah, I do think everyone should get out of the house more. I'm with you. I do. I mean, just personally speaking. But the good news is they're upgrading, right? They're getting better all the time. They're investing. Yes, right. I'm Gen X, so we have a key that we wear around our necks, and that we leave the house all the time. But so with that data in mind, what I did with one of our pulse surveys, one of our last ones actually, was I asked them to do a little future casting. So I asked my readers, what will the restaurant of the future focus on? And I wanted them to kind of give me some big picture ideas. And I was pretty impressed with how big picture they went, actually. So 35% of our survey respondents said that the restaurant of the future will focus on personalization and customization. And then an additional 25% said it would focus on automation and AI. And I think both of those things are super important. And I also think they're overlapping concerns. In some ways, they're the same. They're not exactly the same, but they're important things to consider. I think those two ideas will drive a ton of menu, equipment, tech, design choices from beginning to end for the next several years, at the least. But I also wanted to add in a weird wild card. I've been to 3 conferences in a row that brought up the GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, and they brought it up and then immediately dismissed it as not being nothing, right? But I actually believe that the expanding use and popularity of these medications will be deeply consequential to how people eat. And I compare it personally to, I am old enough to have remembered when antidepressants came on the market, and it went from being this obscure thing to being ubiquitous. And I think that we're in for the same thing with these drugs, because they're studying them for all kinds of things, including the fact that they may dampen people's desire for all kinds of vices, including alcohol, which means that there's a lot of implications for that society-wide. And I think, as you can see, Smoothie King already has a GLP-1 menu on their website, and it's a top-level menu item, so it's something they're really pushing. But you know, as far as the implications broader and across the board, I think it means that we're going to be in for maybe smaller menu items, more appetizers, more protein-focused, more fiber-focused, veg forward. All of those things. And then also, because of the way they're studying it for alcohol, millennials already love non-alcoholic beverages. As a Gen Xer, I would never spend $14 for a juice. I'm never doing that. That is insane. So every time I go out with my coworker, Samantha, she's like, oh, look, they have a green. I was like, you're not spending $14 on like blended vegetables. What are you doing? So like, I'm like, if there's vodka in there, okay. But there's not. So anyway, but that's going to be bigger, and I think that that is one of the implications. So I'm putting that in as a wild card, so 10 years from now, you can be like, she was right. And then I wanted to talk about what our designers are showing us as being particularly hot right now. And flexibility is hot, which sounds sort of boring, but it actually is really interesting, which is designers are creating flexible spaces that can maximize revenue during peak hours, but also drive revenue during off-peak hours. So that can mean anything from like leaving room in the kitchen to have like a ghost kitchen or a virtual brand. So you're selling out the back door during lunch if lunch isn't your big driver. That can mean adding a retail component. So if you go to your favorite barbecue restaurant, they're going to sell the sauce at your takeout counter. But it also means creating multiple dining rooms or multiple flexible dining spaces within a given restaurant. One, it creates a nice sense of what are called zones in design, which is like, oh, every time you come back, you get a different experience. So you can go to the same place 3 times and get 3 slightly different experiences. But it also gives them flexibility to have a private dining area. It gives them flexibility to have mixology course on a Tuesday night because they have a separate room. So that can be leveraged in that way. And it also, you can also have your content creation team section off on a Wednesday morning and work on their content creation without interrupting the rest of the restaurant. So any idea that maximizes revenue is big. And then I already touched on technology, but it is huge. Everything is being touched by technology. So investing in technology, robotics, automation, all of it is to create frictionless experiences for the consumer, which is what we're trying to get to. We're trying to make it as easy as possible to order, as easy as possible to get what you want, and get it the way that you want it. Most people want it on the go these days, but some people want to linger. So you want to be able to have it both ways. It's also to help the operator reduce costs, labor costs. So any technology that serves those purposes is hot. And for me, I think it means, so basically you have to have a good quality website, a robust platform, an app that's branded. So you have an experience in your phone, which is the most important thing in the world is your phone. We all know that. But, again, it's also about making it simpler for the employees. And then I thought this was a fun one. SaladWorks is a brand that has a Sally the Robot, a salad vending machine, which sounds sort of terrible, but I'm sure it's fine. I haven't had anything from Sally the Robot yet, but maybe, probably it's good. And then the other thing that's super hot is designing for off-premises experiences. Again, this is about convenience, on-the-go food. Most obviously, it means adding drive-throughs, which is one way to, any way that drives patrons in and out and third-party delivery in and out in a fast and effective way is great. This photo is Chick-fil-A, but who's known for having an incredibly efficient drive-through. But I just read, too, that Chipotle just opened its 1,000th location with a Chipotlane, which is their digital-only drive-through. So, yeah, it's a digital-only, so you have to order on the app and then drive-through. Apparently, I don't know, it makes me laugh that I couldn't just drive through. But, everyone has a thing. So more chains are also offering double drive-throughs, digital-only drive-throughs, all that kind of stuff is really hot. And that has big implications for site selection. So the prices of places that are easy to have drive-throughs are going up. On the inside of the restaurant, that means having enough space to have a robust takeout area where you're going to have a lot more to-go packaging. Anything you need to serve that area needs to be built in. On the development side, I actually just saw it yesterday. I was excited. I keep getting press releases for Scooter's Coffee. We don't have them in the Chicago area, but drive-through coffee, they're opening 1 billion locations. That is going to be something you're going to see everywhere in the next few years. And then, format innovations. I think these are really fun. Format innovations can mean a lot of things. It's basically just a way for an established brand to sort of present itself to market in a new way. So most obviously those are like casinos, airports, stadiums, those captured audience spaces. But it's also, I did mention, this is actually an interesting one. I liked that. SaladWorks, as I said, has the dubious robot vending machine, but they also have locations are cropping up inside grocery stores. So they're actually opening SaladWorks locations inside grocery stores, and you can do that as a grab and go, which is obviously very popular in the grocery segment, or you can also have it prepared to order. So they're kind of offering both. And then for fuller service, for casual dining, they're doing format spin-offs. So they're opening their own fast casual versions of their brands. So you've got, this is the latest one I've seen, which is Perkins has now Griddle and Go. So they're offering their best of menu in a to-go format. And then, but you've got P.F. Chang's open Pagoda, which is one that they're growing. Hooters has Hoots. So everybody is spinning off into these little fast casual versions of themselves. And on one hand, it's smart and clever because you can get your favorite thing without having to sit down and you can get it to go. But it's also a way for those particular, casual dining's taken a real hit the last few years. And it's a way for them to capitalize on their brand in formats that are actually doing well. And everyone knows fast casual is the hotness, basically. And then, this is a fun one. I wanted to talk a little bit about some unspoken trends. These are not things that I'm getting in survey results, but they're things I'm seeing come across my desk. And so one of the big things that I'm seeing, and I mentioned the residential look and scale is very popular. That is going to be continuing to be popular for a long time, I think. But I also think that restaurants are taking a page from wellness and spa spaces to create a healthful feel. This was really hot a couple years ago during the pandemic, but it's kind of transformed and become a little more subtle. Whereas before, we were calling it at work the safety theater, which is, I mean, I went to my favorite Mexican restaurant, I don't know, 2022, and they took my temperature, and I was like, this is wild. But so they were doing all these things to sort of theatrically show you that it was safe to be here and that we were taking all these proactive steps. That has turned into more of an aesthetic than a actual like expression of let me take your temperature, which is weird and invasive. But I also think biophilia, if you're not familiar with that, is the idea of bringing the indoors or the outdoors inside. So there's a lot of greenery, a lot of fresh spaces, a lot of sense of like wellness. And so those two things kind of go together. That's a picture of a place in China, actually, and it has a very organic shape and form, but this is sort of the ideal of this trend. But I've seen it in lots of ways. In a lot of coffee shops seem to feel this way. A lot of the health forward fast casuals tend to feel this way. So I think those are kind of fun. And then the one thing I wanted to talk about, which I know Carrie likes very much, is storytelling and restaurant design. Designers love to take it up a notch. And I think storytelling and design is important, and it can take many forms. But I think we all understand the basics of branding, even if we can't always express what that means. But storytelling takes it up a notch in the sense, and this is a quote from Dwayne McEwen, who's president of DMAC Architecture, and he designs restaurants. Storytelling and theming are different things. The story needs to connect to the place, the culture, and the people. If you're just decorating a space to produce a theme, you end up with a commodity that lacks soul. And I thought that was a very good summary of what that means. And it can take a lot of formats. I'm going to show you two examples that I think are really fun. One is from Dwayne McEwen himself. He did the Michael Jordan restaurants in Chicago, and I think they might be outside Chicago too, I can't remember. But so he created this space, and the host stand, to the left of the host stand, has a wall of floating photos of Michael Jordan. And there are other elements about Michael Jordan throughout. This is called personification, which is when they sort of take the theme of the restaurant and make it a person. And obviously, it's often a chef or the chef's family or the owner, in the case of Michael Jordan. So they wanted to make it feel as if those photos were floating in space and that effectively Michael Jordan can defy gravity. And they wanted to have that sense of that throughout the restaurant. So I thought that was really fun. The thing that I think is more sort of fun and weird, and I really like it, is Jaguar Bolera in Raleigh, North Carolina. It was designed by FAM Design. And this is an interesting space. It's a 21,000 square foot entertainment venue. And the personification in this instance is a fictional woman from the 1950s. She is artistic, independent, and fashionable. And this restaurant is her home. So there are design details throughout that drive home this idea. And I thought what was so cute is, so this is the entrance, and it looks a lot to me like what the residential scale, again, it looks like when you walk into someone's house. I mean, you walk into my house, there's a little table and there's a mirror above it. And so they have that same thing. So this really cute tortoiseshell mirror. But the detail in the front and the pink, not vanity, see, I'm at my house, at the host stand, the detail at the front, it's a collection of vintage brooches because the woman whose house this is loves jewelry. So they're backlit and displayed, and it makes it seem like throughout the entire space, there are these little elements like that are arranged, that are her collections. And so you get a sense of this person, even though a person doesn't actually exist. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But this is the kind of deeper level thinking that's happening in high quality restaurant design today. I think that that's really fun and interesting. And then I want to talk a little bit about what customers want. And it's much more simple. Oh, sure. Yeah.
On the storytelling,
Yeah.
they creating a page on their website that also tells them?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It's really interesting. I've seen a bunch. I've seen it executed several ways. I've seen it like, who is our dream clientele? And I remember I'm not going to remember the restaurant. I feel bad, but I remember the interview. But the designer told me that they had this dream couple that would be someone who dines at their restaurant once a week, and they built out a whole life for this couple, and everything related to the design was related to making those people feel comfortable. That's a great way of like, who is my dream client, and how do I get to them? But they don't talk about it in the design. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It kind of depends on how high level it was and how dedicated they are to it. I know that I was just talking to somebody from KTGY, which is a design firm in Chicago, and he was telling me that they've employed personification a bunch of times, that it gives you a real grounding and that you can tell a story around that. And it's very subtle in some ways, but it does add a layer of richness to it. I like that, actually. I think it's a cool thing to do. Anyway. Let me get, where was I at? Acoustics, yes, okay. So I was gonna talk a little bit about what customers want. And study after study has shown us, not me, but everyone, that consumers have two big pet peeves about restaurants that they don't like. It's dirty bathrooms and super loud dining rooms. And there are reasons for why it's loud. I mean, restaurants want things to be lively. They want to feel like you're having an experience, you're at a place that feels fun. So that's part of it. However, restaurants are sometimes too loud, and that's because very few people understand acoustical engineering, even though most people assume they do understand some aspects of it. I'm definitely not an acoustical engineer, but I did put together a list of articles if anyone's interested. The QR code will take you to a list of articles on our website that is all about acoustics. You can have a crash course if you're interested. The one thing I can tell you, I can give you two key tips. One is people tend to want to retrofit by putting like a rug underneath the table. That doesn't work. The acoustical engineer told me it's also a little gross. But the acoustical engineer said that that's kind of an old wives' tale. It doesn't work because that's not where sound is bouncing off of. He's like, no, it's not bouncing off the floor and then under. It's all around. Yes. And then the other thing that they told us, and this is a webinar I did, it's in the list of the articles, the guy who was on the webinar told us to move the speakers down to ear level and then turn the volume down. And that will be less bouncing of sound waves and will also just create a better vibe for the customer. So those are my two big tips for you on that front. But it's an important thing. And most restaurants do not have a budget for an acoustical engineer. So it's something that is challenging. But the good news is there are a lot of products out there that are meant to retrofit spaces. One of my favorite Mexican restaurants, not the one that took my temperature, a different one, they were very loud, and then I came back on a different day, and they had put baffles up all over the ceiling, but they painted them the same color as the ceiling, so it was very subtle.
Was that a big?
I will say it was somewhat noticeable. It was still pretty loud in there, though. Right. Well, speaking of me without my glasses today, my next point is customers want that good lighting, right? So they want to make sure that they can, several things. I think that LED lighting has really created a revolution in lighting design. You can do some incredible stuff. And my husband actually created a custom light fixture in our kitchen that hangs over like the counter. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, imagine what a lighting designer could do with something like this. And he was kind of offended. I was like, no, I meant it as a compliment. He was like, no, but anyway, that's a longer story. But yeah, so it's just been really fascinating lighting design trends right now. So the big trends we're seeing are there's a splashy mix of like statement chandelier pieces so that there's something that you could be like, ooh, look at that. I'll take a picture. It's all for the gram. And then there's also pendant lights are very popular. Globe lights, they diffuse light, create a nice vibe. And then the third one that is less popular but should be more popular are spotlights or pin lights that highlight tables. I've been to a lot of fine dining restaurants where I had to pull out my phone to use the flashlight in order to understand what I'm ordering. Generally, customers don't love that. It happens a lot, but a little pin light can help. So that's definitely one of the things that we're seeing. And it works on two levels. One, obviously, I could read the menu without my glasses, but also it would help because it highlights the food and beverage. And taking pictures of all that stuff is still super important. And this is a picture from my Instagram. And to me, there's no higher use of your iPhone than taking a photo in portrait mode of the delicious cocktail or food. Like, that's it. And I thought it was just me and maybe my age group, but I was telling my coworker about this, and she told me her teenage son, for years now, he's in college actually now, so I think he's like 20. He has been, Snap eats first is what he says, and he Snapchats every single thing he eats and has for years on end. So yeah, Snap eats first. But yeah, so I feel like this is something that customers and consumers in general really want. And then I think the most important thing, and this is probably my last point, is the thing that people want from restaurants above all else is community and kinship. You go there to eat with people you care about. You know, this is important. And I think that one of the interesting things that's happening right now is that there are members-only clubs propping up like everywhere. The New York Times had a whole article about why does everyone in New York have members-only mania? Basically, we're seeing a ton of private clubs, country clubs, hobby clubs, anything you could name are cropping up and having private spaces and semi-private dining. Some of them have more open, some of them have less. I think that's pretty interesting. I feel like, that's sort of like that post-pandemic trend of wanting community, but also having a little bit of a self-selecting in-group is very appealing to people. I read, here's the stat that I wanted to see, glasses. One stat I read recently said that 60% of private clubs increased their membership in 2022 alone. I think that's pretty stunning. And I'm only a member of Costco, but I do get the appeal. I feel like it's interesting. Anyway, so I do think that kinship and that sense of community and place is the most important thing about restaurants in general, aside from good food. And if I had 3 key takeaways, it would be that flexibility is key, maximize revenue, drive innovation, technological integration from beginning to end, every corner and every way is big right now. And then finally, convenience and Gen Z, huge drivers. And Gen Z's preferences will be driving restaurant design for a few years, even though we're not happy about it. Okay, and then if you, this is my contact info. Did you want me to go back?
No,
Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'd love to have questions.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So that's, I was going to say, if you have any questions or anything, this is my contact information. Please let me know. What's your question?
I love trends. I had this beautiful survey I took in my store called from the noticeable group called Hearsay. I asked him, people aren't stopping from going to eat out, even though the economy with inflation seems to be changing a little bit. And one of the things he mentioned, and I wonder if you have any answers to this. Sorry, boomers and Gen Xers, we're problems. We're not teaching our kids how to cook, so they eat out every meal. Are you seeing that as a normal trend across the board? The anxiety thing throws that into a loop, though. That's why I didn't catch on to that. I was like, ooh, that's probably true, too.
I don't know if I don't have specific data to that point, but the same folks that I got that anxiety data from, Menu Matters, they did a really good presentation at one of our events that I can send you the link if you want it. It was fascinating. Yeah. So much interesting data in what they did. But they talked about how the anxiety piece is so big that they also have a lot of anxiety around choices that they're making and a lot of guilt about what they overwhelmingly feel guilty and bad about the food, and they think no matter what they ordered, they made the wrong choice. And so there's a lot of guilt and anxiety around that. So I wonder if that kind of keeps them from moving, having that much emotion tied up in every meal seems like it would keep you from cooking, eating, all of it. So yeah. I mean, I didn't say that. You said that.
I'm a
But-
millennial, but
Yes. I just thought it was really interesting. I didn't realize, I knew that there was a lot of data that said Gen Z is extremely anxious. I didn't realize how much of it was around food. So it's pretty interesting.
So maybe we'll have antidepressants.
I mean, I'm not against that. Yes, exactly. Ubiquitous, like I said. But yes.
So, a lot of things that you said made me think we've and I think this predates COVID, but stripped away so many things in our experiences in that community and what have you. And then we artificially are looking for ways to put it again.
Yes. No, I agree with you on that front, because I think we're so focused on convenience in some ways that now you see people going to these private clubs, they're looking for something, right? And so but that's an opportunity too for restaurants that are open to the public. What are we lacking? What can we create? What can we add on? I mean, you think about it, there are also a lot of activity-based things. So you've got people who aren't eating because they're on a different kind of medication. So they're going to go play pickleball and then maybe have a snack, right? So you've got there's a real mix in how things are moving, especially with the entertainment. So in that realm, I think that there's a lot of opportunity to create community without having it be a private club.
Any demographic information regarding the clubs and joining those private
I
clubs?
do not, but from what I've heard, it is across the board. So they're very popular, and I mean, I was surprised even the country clubs are back. I mean, everything is back, so it's kind of interesting. That's actually a good question, though. I'm going to look into that some more and see if there's some demographic drivers there. I mean, I don't know. Are you too anxious to join a club? I don't want to be part of any club that would have me as a member, which is why I only belong to Costco. Just Costco, that's it. It is. And they give you snacks, which I do like. Yes. But did you guys think I missed anything? Because if you think, you can come tell me privately, but I'd love to know.
Well, I'm wondering, and a lot of things that you've come across with interviewed, we talked about automation and AI, and we certainly see that in some factories that
Sure.
are represented, Chick-fil-A doing drive-through.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that AI or automation are even some convenience packages for restaurants, for sound design? Lighting is going to be different for sound.
Oh. I haven't heard of any package deals like that, but I'm sure that some people are speccing them in. It's got to be out there. I haven't heard of anything specifically like that, but it makes sense. You should package that. Do it. Go for it. Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, that'd be something like
Yeah.
neat for A Smart or somebody to
Yeah.
do, a dealer to even do these kind of classes or add these kind of services.
Yeah, I mean, I do
Even
think
a
that there's,
restaurant to add that, or
Yeah.
a food service consultant to partner with them.
with an acoustical
Yeah.
expert. Yeah, no, I think that that's actually a great idea. I think that that's something that people need. And like I mean, I've certainly complained at local restaurants a million times who are not, I'm sure, not hiring a giant firm or a giant like team. You know, you've got chain operators who have their entire in-house design team and they can afford to do a bunch of things and test various things. But you've got an independent operator, they're just trying to have like a fun Friday night. So having an outlet that allows them to do that, or having somebody who could help them that isn't going to charge them what an acoustical engineer would charge them, would be great. Because that's been the biggest thing. From what I've heard from restaurant designers, they are never given the budgets to add an acoustical engineer. So they kind of have to wing it.
That noise. So for business lunches or even
Yeah.
just with friends, it's.
I'm with it. I get it. I one of the restaurant that added the baffles, I'd complained there. I was like, listen, I'm sitting across from my husband and I am screaming. This is crazy. But yeah, so it's a big problem. And I think it's like for consumers, it's definitely a top problem. Aside from dirty bathrooms, which I can't do much about personally. But yeah. Yeah. Anybody? We're good? This has been so fun. Thank you so much for having me. It's great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.